didn't realize you were retiring.
Hi, Pat. Yeah, we've talked about it for a couple of years now, right?
Time goes by fast. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. We miss you.
Okay, it is 7:04. We are streaming now. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the regular Board of Education meeting for Monday, May 24th. I've taken a few minutes to scroll through all of the faces on the screen. I can say that members present, including myself, Kathleen Holtz, Sean McAvoy, Margaret Stamatis, Rachel Ruggieri, Liz Vogel, Pino Malhotra, Ken Schoberg, Nora Gatos will be joining us later. With that, can we all take ourselves off of mute and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, let's move right on into the recognition of retirees.
All right, why don't we start off at the high school? Dr. Greenwood, you ready? We've heard a little bit about some plans happening with babies and grandbabies. Why don't you start us off?
You got it. Angela's here, and I'm not sure, is Ann Lester here too? Did she end up?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
you're
I'm
here.
here. Yep.
Oh, there you are, Ann. Sorry. So many on the screen that I couldn't see everyone. So that's great. So now you popped up my screen. That's great. So I have two retirees in attendance tonight, and a few others I'll speak about a little more briefly. But one of the things that's wonderful about being back at Ridgefield is that you're going to find out that these folks I'll talk about tonight, many of them I started my career with at the same time. We've spent 20 years together, and so when Angela said, a few minutes ago before we were recording that I had to come tonight because I told Jake I'd be there. She's right. I did. I told her you better be there tonight. So I'm glad. It's so good to see everybody. So I'll start with Angela. So Angela Tropiano has been a teacher for 35 years and the past 21 at Ridgefield. She lives by the motto Volere e Potere, which is listed as a tagline in her email and means when there is a will, there is a way. She holds the highest expectations for her students, while also being one of the most caring of individuals. Angela brings Italian language and culture alive in her classroom and has always gone above and beyond for her students, for whom she cares deeply. She's worked hard to expand the Italian program and bring it to its current level of excellence. She will be greatly missed, and we wish her much happiness and a well-deserved retirement. I definitely will miss seeing her around the building, but I know she's in town, so I'll find her anyways. We chose a book for each of the retirees. Our book for Angela is called The History of Italy, a captivating guide to Italian history, starting from the first settlements through the Middle Ages to the modern period by captivating history. So congratulations, Angela. You will be greatly missed.
Thank you so much. I'm going to miss all of you. But like you said, I'm in Ridgefield. So my door is open, an espresso, a cappuccino. I'm 7 minutes away from the high school. And you're going to see me because my grandchildren will be attending, the high school, and they are in the district, and this is the best district to be. I was a mom. I am a teacher still, and a grandmother, and I thank you all. This is the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you so much. I'll move on to Ann Lester. Ann has been a rock for the Visual and Performing Arts Department for the past 15 years. Her love of knowledge and her creativity have impacted her students greatly. Many of them have gone on to post-secondary art schools to achieve success in creative fields directly because of her influence. Ann's experience as a successful mixed media artist and previous career in the graphic arts has imbued her teaching with a high level of expectations from all of her students. Although she's now retiring and onto many more days of creating art, her positive influence will always remain with us. And one of the things about Ann is, I'll say personally, she is an actual practicing artist, and that is she's just a joy to talk to because she'll actually talk about all the art that she's interested in at home, and it's really just wonderful to have that in the building. The book that we chose is called You Are an Artist by Sarah Ernst Green, and thank you very much, Ann. We're definitely going to miss you.
Oh, well, it's been a joy and a pleasure, a highlight of my life to be at Ridgefield and just to nurture the kids and just to bring the arts alive at Ridgefield High School. It's really, truly been a very momentous part of my life. So I've loved every minute of it. I really have. So, and, I just hope the arts continue and thrive in Ridgefield. We have that wonderful resource at the Aldridge, and, I hope every child gets to really understand that it can touch and enrich their lives. So thank you.
Thank you, Ann. We'll miss you.
Yeah, I'll miss you too, but it's been a joy.
All right, I have a handful of other people, Susie, if you don't mind. I'll say just a little bit about who are not in attendance tonight, but I'll run through them if that's okay, because they certainly deserve to be spoken about. The first is Ray Belizna, who's a dedicated and beloved member of our math department for over 2 decades. Both students and parents enjoyed his jovial nature and appreciated his desire to always offer support and encouragement. Ray was also a really important coach for us, basketball and golf, and supported his students outside of the classroom. Always, always, always. We wish him well. And the book we chose for him is called Mathematics: How Gamblers, Managers, and Sports Enthusiasts Use Mathematics in Baseball, Basketball, and Football by Wayne Winston. So congratulations to Ray. John Grega spent 13 years in Ridgefield teaching middle school biology and 7 at the high school. For 7 years, and then at the high school for 3 of those years. John put a tremendous emphasis on student discovery to drive lessons and leave students with a love of learning. John's philosophy also influenced his colleagues to reflect upon their own teaching. He's deeply missed by the science department, and we all wish him well. And the book we chose for him is called The Tangled Tree: A Radical New History of Life by David Quayman. Kathy Kelly was our athletics secretary for nearly 2 decades, keeping the department running smoothly and always going above and beyond to ensure that scheduling issues and last-minute changes were always handled quickly and efficiently. She's already loving her retired life, and the first thing she spoke about when I talked to her was about her grandson, Brooks. And so we wish Kathy all the best in her retirement. The book we chose is called A Column of Fire by Ken Follett. Michael Sheehan, many of you know Mike. He joined the Ridgefield Public Schools over 2 decades ago, serving as a middle school teacher, an assistant principal, a principal, and finally ended up at Ridgefield High School as an English teacher. Mike brought to each building his intelligence, humor, patience, collegiality, and kindness, for which he's greatly missed. And we wish him all the best, of course, in his retirement. And the book we chose is J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye: A Cultural History by Joseph Benson. Debbie Shear has been in Ridgefield Public Schools for 18 years. She was a hardworking and well-loved special education teacher who dedicated her time to ensure her students' needs were always met. Debbie was also part of the Ridgefield High School Social Committee, and that's what I really remember Debbie for. And she helped to foster and maintain a great culture of camaraderie, always sending out emails trying to get people together moving forward. Debbie will be enjoying her retirement at her second home in Vermont. The book we chose is called The Last Garden in England by Julia Kelly. Sue Brown worked in Ridgefield Public Schools for 26 years, where she was a special education paraeducator. She dedicated her time to working with some of our most significantly disabled students. She was a caring, compassionate, and dedicated paraeducator. We wish her much happiness. We chose Women Who Launch, Women Who Shattered Glass Ceilings by Marlene Wagman Geller. And finally, we have Clint Huffaker, who joined the World Language Department at RHS over 16 years ago, teaching French for students in grades 9 through 12. Clint was a dedicated teacher who set high standards for his students, and he integrated his knowledge of French culture into his lessons to enrich the classroom experience. We wish him well, and we chose A Bite-Sized History of France: Gastronomic Tales of Revolution, War, and Enlightenment by Stéphane Hanaut. So congratulations to everyone. You will certainly be deeply missed, and you can tell there's over 150 years of dedication to the high school right there. So thank you to everyone. You'll certainly be missed.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, now that I kept Dr. Greenwood on his toes and went out of order, I'm going to go back to the order. And Branchville, Mr. Margolis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm excited tonight to celebrate and congratulate Diane Schnee, kindergarten teacher at Branchville. Last week, Mrs. Schnee, who I see here, surprised us all and announced that after 26 years at Branchville, she's decided to retire. Mrs. Schnee is the last BES classroom teacher among the group lovingly referred to as the originals, those that were teachers in 1995 when Branchville, the building, reopened. Anyone who knows Mrs. Schnee is aware that she lives and breathes teaching and learning at all hours. Colleagues and parents alike are quick to remark about her boundless energy and spirit. She has made learning fun and engaging for hundreds of students throughout her tenure. In retirement, Mrs. Schnee looks forward to spending time with her family and friends and competing on the pickleball court, which she is going to be doing in like 20 minutes from now. She had to get in to this meeting to go compete in some type of championship. So we're going to read more about her, I think, in the future from the court. And she's going to tend to her robust garden. I am personally grateful for everything that Mrs. Schnee has taught me about early childhood education. Wish her all the best. The book dedicated in her honor is called We All Play by Julie Flett. Thank you, Mrs. Schnee.
Thank you, Mr. Margolis. I teased Keith last week when I announced to staff that I was retiring because he says every day there's no better place to be than Branchville. I said, well, I guess if I truly believe that, I wouldn't be retiring. But it is a fabulous, fabulous place to work. I have enjoyed every moment. Well, the pandemic year and a half was not the best, but I have really, really enjoyed the support of 3 principals. I work with an amazing staff. And yes, I've taught hundreds of kids in Ridgefield, and it has been an honor. So thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Tonight, we also congratulate special education teacher who I saw here, Mary Tracy. Mrs. Tracy started her career in 1981, teaching high school, where she coached track and field and gymnastics, followed by working as a junior high school teacher focused on supporting students to develop life skills and connections to the broader community. Prior to coming to BES, Mrs. Tracy was a teacher at Veterans Park Elementary, where she was a special education teacher, and she held types of leadership roles in the building. 4 years ago, when she came to be part of the BES community, we had no idea how lucky we are. She quickly became part of the fabric of the community. Her commitment is also unparalleled. It's not uncommon to see Mrs. Tracy just show up on the ball field in town to watch a student's game or to go out of her way to brighten a colleague's day. In retirement, Mrs. Tracy is looking forward to Sunday afternoons to herself with no lesson plans to write. She loves to walk and bike and will hopefully get to do as much as possible. She's hoping to volunteer at the dialysis center at Danbury High School. Her oldest daughter is building a home on the bay in Ocean City, Maryland, and she hopes to spend there as much time there as possible. In her honor, Walking Towards Peace, the true story of brave women called Peace Pilgrims by Annie Bowler is the book being dedicated in her honor. Congratulations, Mary.
Thank you very much, Keith. I appreciate your very kind words. It has been a long and wonderful, almost 40 years, all in special education. I have been able to meet with and communicate with some wonderful families, and have just always wanted to do the best for the children in our care. I look forward to Sundays, but I also will not look forward to a lot of PPTs. So that's one thing I don't think I'll miss. But thank you again. And I must say that I am among a very important group of people. So congratulations to everybody tonight. Thank you.
All right, here we go. ERMS.
Okay, very exciting. I have 3 retirees to present to you this evening, and the first is Karen McGowan. Hey, Karen, you ready? All right. So teaching was a change of career for Karen, and so we've been lucky to have her teaching Spanish for the past 20 years. Not only has she positively impacted students, but she has also served her colleagues in the role of department leader. Now, according to an ERMS local legend, when she first began teaching at ERMS, she was given mostly 6th grade classes. And wondering how she might engage those young ones, brand new to the language, she came up with an adorable way to teach kids the names of fruits in Spanish, of course. She would don her apron and she would cut up actual fruit that the students would call out and name for her so that when she was finished, they could all partake in a giant fruit salad. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it does sound like something creative and interactive that Karen would come up with. And that is her trademark, to really find engaging ways to have students experience the language, the culture, and the richness of a world language. She is so dedicated to her students. She keeps in touch with them after they leave Eastridge, and she can hear all about their adventures. She is a wonderful teacher, person, and friend to her colleagues. We appreciate everything that she has done and the effort that she's put into teaching our kiddos and our profession, especially those late afternoon meetings when we solved all the problems with world language education. Karen is going to be missed, and we wish her all the very best. The book donated in her name to our library is Pablo Remembers by George Ancona. And in keeping with Karen's mission for teaching, this is a story that celebrates family, history, and culture. Congratulations, Karen. Make sure you unmute, Karen.
Wrong place. Thank you. That's how I go out, trying to unmute. I don't know what it says about my career, but I started in the year of 9/11, and I'm going out after a year of COVID. So those are odd bookends for a career, but it's been a really good one. And I just want to give a shout out to my colleagues at Eastridge, because they've been my mainstay. You know, every day when I go in, if I have issues, problems, anything I need to discuss or support on, I could always count on the staff at Eastridge. And I just want Tricia and everybody to know how much I've appreciated that support. So thank you all.
Congratulations, Karen. Our second honoree tonight is Dawn Koalas. Dawn, where are you? I need to just find you on my screen. There you are. All right. So Dawn has served Ridgefield Public Schools for 28 years as a special education teacher, excuse me. And over the course of those years, she's also been a department leader. She is full of enthusiasm and energy. And when you think of her retiring, you don't put those two things together at all. She is constantly encouraging her students, her colleagues, to do the best that they can and offering any support as needed. And with her students, it's not just about them with their academics. She is really about supporting them and growing as people, as young adults. And a year or so ago, she and I had a conversation about where she was considering, maybe she was getting close to retirement. And what's interesting about Dawn, and so admirable, is when the pandemic hit, she said, absolutely not. I am not retiring because I need to be here to help our kids when we come back full in. And even though she knew this would be the toughest year of her career, she also knew it would be the most rewarding. And boy, what a strong finish. She is still researching about her kids, asking colleagues what she can do to help them. And we love that she never gives up. One of her students said, she is always ready to help me and I need a lot of help. Now, if that isn't a 7th grader, I don't know what one is. And just one last thing about Dawn, in this whole pandemic hybrid thing, she has been cruising around the hallway with her mobile desk, her stand-up desk, going to different classes so that she can be with her students, whether they're home, in classes, and she just kind of wheels down the hallway. She's a terrific teacher, person, and a good friend to many who will be missed. We wish her the very best. A book donated in her name to our library is A Song for a Whale by Lynn Kelly. And this story really reflects Dawn's philosophy of education and honors the power of community. And those traits initially perceived as a weakness are in fact our strength. So congratulations, Dawn. Good for you.
Thank you. Got my fan club here.
Thank you, Tricia, for those kind words. I really appreciate it. Yes, I've been at East Ridge a long time, everybody. I was there when we had the annex, when we didn't have the library. We had to walk outside in the rain and the snow. I've been there a long time. I always say I am the most veteran at the school, not the oldest, but the most veteran is a line I like to say. But I thank you to Ridgefield Public Schools for the past 28 years. I was lucky enough to work under 4 really great principals over that time period. And I always thank all of them for their support. And I don't know where Liz Hanaway is, but I have a gut feeling that I might not be done. I still might be getting some phone calls to do some.
Don't tempt me, Dawn. Don't tempt me.
Anyways, thank you very much for the kind words.
Congratulations.
Congrats. And then our last retiree who is not here this evening is Sharon Sass. And she served Ridgefield for 19 years as a special education teacher. She was only at ERMS for a short time, but she was always so child-centered and an advocate for their growth and success. And her area of expertise really was reading, and she committed all her time to make sure that our students were well equipped to navigate all of their subjects. In her honor, we are donating the book Marcello in the Real World by Marcello Stork to our school library. And this book tells the story of a young man who embraces his uniqueness to make a positive difference in the world. So congratulations, Sharon. Thank you.
Okay, we have Principal Mayette in Farmingville.
Good evening, and congratulations to all of our retirees tonight. We have 2 special retirees from Farmingville. First, it is my pleasure to thank Patricia Cooney for her 28 years of service to Ridgefield Public Schools. Pat began her long teaching career in town on September 1st, 1992, as a 3rd grade and later 4th grade teacher. In 2007, she transitioned to a broader role as the K-5 math department chair. In this role, she worked with all 6 elementary schools on math instruction and curriculum, helping to develop the skills of our elementary teachers as math instruction shifted with new resources. Her role expanded into middle school mathematics for a few years as well, when Pat oversaw K-8 instruction in Ridgefield. After 10 years as department chair, she shifted her career again, serving as math specialist at Farmingville, where she supported students directly again through intervention and supported Farmingville teachers. Simultaneously, she worked with the math specialists across the district, serving as the lead math specialist. After several years in this dual role, Pat retired from Ridgefield Public Schools this past September, and the book title, We Are Water Protectors by Carol Lindstrom has been purchased in her honor. Thank you, Pat, for all you've done for the students, the staff, and the families of both Farmingville and Ridgefield Public Schools. Your impact on mathematics instruction in our district is longstanding and significant. We wish you all the best, Pat.
Thank you, Tracy. And, I think how lucky was I to be able to work in 8 of the 9 schools and central office, because everybody on here almost, except for the high school teachers, I think I worked with side by side and learned from everybody. So it is my disappointment to leave, but I know there is lots of good things happening in Ridgefield, because Ridgefield is always a place where children are nurtured and education is celebrated. So thank you, Tracy, and thank you, everybody. Thank you.
So it is also my pleasure to thank Deborah Holliday for her 13 years of teaching service in Ridgefield Public Schools, and specifically at Farmingville Elementary. Deb began her teaching career with us on August 22nd, 2008. She served as a 3rd grade classroom teacher for 6 years before moving to 5th grade, where she taught writing and integrated studies for the past 7 years of her career. In addition to her classroom contributions, Deb has mentored some of our new teachers and served on many committees while also helping to develop curriculum. Deb has touched many students and families in her role as their teacher and has had a significant impact on her colleagues over the years, establishing herself as a compassionate, collaborative professional who does whatever it takes to help her students. She will be missed next year as she begins her retirement at the end of this school year. And the book, Home of the Brave by Catherine Applegate, has been purchased in her honor. Thank you, Deb, for all you have done for the students, the staff, and the families of Farmingville and Ridgefield Public Schools. We wish you the best.
Thank you, Tracy. Thanks, everybody. You're going to bring tears to my eyes because that's one of my favorite books. I enjoy it with the children every September. Yeah, I look around and I think about how I've grown professionally and personally from working with the children and my colleagues and the parents. I just received a couple of texts from one of my parents from last year and one of my colleagues in Ridgebury. But I'm not going away too fast. I'm going to be working on the Bridge program this summer and hopefully tutoring for my friend Beth Robbins, who's expecting a baby. So I said to her, I really don't want to sub, but I'll sub for you because that will just be my joy. Congratulations to everybody. I could mimic exactly what everybody has said. It's been so wonderful. Teaching was a second career for me. I never thought in a million years that I would start teaching at the age of 39. But it's been such a wonderful journey. It really has been. But let me tell you a little bit what I'm going to do. So in the future, I'm hoping to visit my son in California. My husband and I have a house down in Tampa, so we'll be going back and forth, snowbirds. And I'm desperately trying to get back into my yoga practice and hike and spending some time boating out on the lake near here. So thank you, everybody. It really means so much to me. And hi, Ken. Okay, thanks again.
Congratulations. Okay, Ridgebury. Where's
All right.
Palladino? There he is.
Yeah, congratulations to everybody. This is a fun night to hear about everybody's experience and give everybody well wishes. We have 2 retirees this year. Our first one is Teresa Cerullo. I don't believe she's here, but I'd like to say a few things about Teresa. Teresa was our office clerical for 28 years at Ridgebury. She was one of the faces and voices of Ridgebury, and she always greeted everybody with a smile and a warm hello in the front office. Teresa loved what she did and did her job in a way that made people feel welcomed and opened up. Teresa always helped out wherever she was needed. That was it, whether to cover a lunch shift, if we were short-staffed, or to make sure she stayed with a child that missed their bus and made sure that they feel safe and happy while waiting for her parents. After spending 28 years in the main office, she will be missed, and we congratulate her on her retirement. The book that we picked up for Mrs. Cerullo is a perfect fit for Teresa. If you know Teresa, one of her side things is to take care of pets on the side, and she's a big cat lover. So the book that we picked out is A Kid's Guide to Cats. We thought this was the perfect book for Mrs. Cerullo, as it's a guide for kids on how to provide a safe, healthy environment and ensure positive interactions and rewarding long-term relationships with her feline friends, just like she did for so many families and kids at Ridgebury. So congratulations to Teresa, wherever you are out there, probably spending time with your grandkids. Our next retiree is Lynn Meyer. Lynn spent 35 years dedicating herself in service to the children of Ridgefield. Mrs. Meyer has been both a reading teacher as well as a first grade teacher and has brought the love of learning into hundreds of kids' lives. Mrs. Meyer taught with a sense of energy and excitement that was contagious. You could walk into Mrs. Meyer's room and just feel the energy and hear the noise of the kids engaged in high-level work. Kids would often come right up to you and tell you exactly what they were learning and how that was going to make them a better reader, writer, or mathematician. One memory I have of Mrs. Meyer is doing a walkthrough, and I walked into her room and I saw her standing on a bookshelf, up on the bookshelf about 5 feet tall, and she had an interactive bulletin board about being a writer. And as she was teaching kids, she was moving around all the different posters. So it was an active chart that was happening. I was a little worried Mrs. Meyer was going to fall down and get hurt, but her kids were just so excited to see their teacher standing up on this bookshelf. While we're excited for Mrs. Meyer, we also know that a hole has been left in Ridgebury. that will be very difficult to fill. We will miss her sense of humor and making those faculty meetings a lot more fun, Mrs. Meyer.
Oh, geez.
We'll miss her leadership because she was a leader in the building, not only by what she said, but by what she did. And most of all, we'll miss her love of teaching. The book that we picked out for Mrs. Meyer is The Mermaid's Purse. We thought this was a great match for Mrs. Meyer as it's based on the life of the beloved author-illustrator Patricia Palaco's own amazing grandmother. It is a wonderful celebration of reading and family, and we know how important both of those are to you. So congratulations. Hope you get to spend lots of time with your grandbabies, and we wish you well.
Congratulations. Okay.
Oh, no, it's fine.
No,
Go ahead.
yes, no, please go. I didn't see you there. Go.
No. I was going to say, I'm the person who just wanted to go out totally silently. And it's like, thank you so much, but it's been great.
Lynn, try again. You froze a little bit.
Lynn, I think you put yourself on mute. I think you're trying to go out quietly. Now, the funny thing is, if you don't know Mrs. Meyer, she might be doing this on purpose.
No. Just know it's all been great and I appreciate it. I'm in good company. Enjoy.
Congratulations. All right. We have Miss Freese here for SERMS tonight. Am I right?
You are right.
Okay.
Mr. Salem is at he apologizes. His daughter is being inducted into the National Honor Society tonight. But I'm really happy because I get the pleasure of speaking on behalf of one of she's become a dear friend and a role model for me, Miss Eileen McCune. Miss Eileen McCune has been teaching in Ridgefield for 16 or 17 years. We're both not sure which. Her team refers to her as Eileen Switzerland McCune because she stays neutral and always listens to all sides. Mother McCune has raised 5 of her children in Ridgefield, which gave her the patience and skill for raising her SERMS children. She could never be snowed and is forever patient. Eileen's retirement begins with a trip to France, where one of her children is living, and I believe she is setting up a pied-à-terre there, and then on to Corsica. On behalf of Tim and myself, I genuinely don't think that we will be able to fill Eileen's shoes. She knows more about reading than anyone I know or have ever worked with in my own 26 years. She knows so much about how to effectively teach reading that kids are learning and using these strategies without even purposefully trying. I was really sad to learn of her retirement for me, and I hope that she will come back in the future in some capacity to the Ridgefield Public Schools because it is truly a huge loss. On Eileen's behalf, we have purchased Our Hearts Are in France by Victoria. Sorry, the last name is not there. Victoria, which I think is appropriate because I think Eileen will be spending lots of time in France. So we are going to miss you. I am going to miss you terribly. We are all going to miss you terribly.
Well, thank you so much. And yes, I am going to be spending a fair amount of time in France. So it's time for me to finally learn the language. Anyway, my time at Scotts Ridge has been phenomenal. Lisa, working with you and Tim is, it's beyond compare. It's been it's an amazing environment, and I have truly enjoyed it. Love my team, and especially the special ed department. And they just a great group of really smart, hardworking people. And I'm gonna miss the dogs. Anyway,
they will be around. Don't you worry.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for coming. I sort of forced her to come because she wanted to go out quietly and humbly, as is Eileen. But just being the true friend she is, she showed up for me.
Couldn't let you talk to nobody from school.
But I am going to do that for Mimi.
Yes. Because
also humble and wanted to go out with no fanfare, but should absolutely and positively be acknowledged, is another true, amazing Ridgefield teacher and a loss for Scotts Ridge. Miss Mimi Harold is an 8th grade science teacher. Mimi's team says that Mimi loves the discovery aspect and science of moving her students towards the understanding phenomena. Students love her Monday chat sessions at the beginning of classes, and that is how Mimi got to know her students. Her no-nonsense attitude, she was a military brat, kept her students engaged and learning. Her retirement will be filled with travel, gardening, and skydiving. She is also setting up a pied-à-terre on her daughter's property, taking care of her grandchildren. I would like to add on behalf of Tim and myself that we quickly identified that Mimi should be teaching science really in a professional lab, not a 6th grade classroom. So we quickly moved her up to 8th grade, and true to Mimi's form, she pushed the thinking and learning to new heights. She is going to be missed by all. And unfortunately, for both of their teams, these incredible women and teachers leave a huge hole in our team and hearts. Their humor, professionalism, work ethic, and what is best for kids' mindsets help to drive our team to be its best. And they are really going to miss them both tremendously. In Mimi's honor, we purchased Florette's Farm Cut Flower Gardens by Erin Benzakian, which anyone that knows Mimi, she would definitely appreciate that. She is a true scientist and environmentalist. So she's also the staff resource for all things gardening, and Mimi will be missed.
Congratulations. Last but not least, hidden here, but still working every single day is Debbie Smythe. Hi, Debbie. And Dawn Norton has a few words to say on behalf of Debbie.
Thank you, Dr. De Silva. It is with tremendous delight that I get to speak on behalf of one of the most dynamic, reliable, and resourceful employees of the Ridgeville Public Schools, Debbie Smythe. Debbie started her career here in 2002 and held positions from a specialized clerical PPT at Branchville and Barlow Mountain to a special education instructional paraeducator at Barlow Mountain. Debbie, being the hardworking, trustworthy, knowledgeable person that she is, accepted the position of registrar in central office in 2013 and has been the face of Ridgeville Public School to many new Ridgeville parents since. As a parent educator and a registrar, I am sure everyone will agree with me that Debbie was the go-to person for many as she made time to learn and expand her own job while supporting everyone around her. While I was asking around about Debbie's initial years at Ridgeville Public Schools, I found out that central office staff actually reached out and begged her to consider applying for registrar's position. To me, that speaks to the dynamic type of person that Debbie is. She did apply, she was hired, and we've never looked back since. From day one at central office, Debbie focused on understanding the job of registrar and helped create a new and more resourceful process for registration. As a Ridgeville resident and a parent of Ridgeville students, she was invaluable to the parents, particularly those who were new to town. In addition to Debbie's integrity and incredible strong working ethics, her willingness to help others, when she would have a little downtime, she would reach out to other departments to see if anyone needed help. From filing to delivering interoffice mail to working on complex spreadsheets, no job was too minimal or challenging for her. And as everyone would agree, which is a dynamic trait of Dr. De Silva's, she was not one to stay idle and always glad to be of service. The one thing Debbie is most noted for, however, is her sense of humor. She is an extremely funny person who could bring a chuckle even on the most difficult days. The only regret that we have here in central office hiring Debbie is the fact that she retired. She will not be an easy person to replace. It is with great gratitude and respect that we honor Debbie Smythe and her 18 years with Ridgeville Public Schools. In honor of her, we've dedicated the book, Travel Book, A Journey Through Every Country in the World. To me, this book fits Debbie as it is filled with fun, colorful, exciting facts, and amazing animals, super insights to fun festivals and fabulous food. It is packed with hundreds of facts about every country on our planet. Congratulations and thank you, Debbie. May you have an amazing adventure in retirement as this book will offer its readers.
Congratulations, Debbie. Oh, the unmute button, Debbie. Not yet.
Oh, in the lower right hand or left hand corner, the little microphone, it should pop up, the little line through it.
Jamie, it wasn't just me.
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Like a Verizon commercial. Well, Dawn, it doesn't sound like you're really talking about me because that's not me. That was just the job. I always just wanted to do my best every day. I got up in the morning, got to work, and never wanted to be idle. And that was, I didn't consider myself anything special other than just doing what I was supposed to be doing. Thank you all. I actually know most of you, whether it be through the schools that I've worked at or through special education or just helping out at the different schools. My husband and I are in Maryland right now. Our daughter is, we had to postpone her first wedding, which was 10/10/2020. And now it is this Saturday. We're crossing our fingers that we aren't going to have rain. And then we considered ourselves that we'll be renting for a little bit here. And then we don't know where we'll go next, but on to the next adventure. And as Dawn and Susie said, I'm still registering lots of kids. So I'm still working for the district in a little different capacity right now. But anyway, it's been a pleasure working with all of you for all these years. And I wish everybody the best of luck.
Thank you, Debbie. Why don't we go off mute just for a second and like really, really cheer, like big claps.
Yeah.
The standing ovation. Yeah, sure.
Congratulations to all of you. So well deserved. I know on behalf of the administration, thank you for your dedication. It's so really warm and it fills our hearts to hear all the kind words said about you and the impact that you must have had on so many children. And for that, we're forever grateful. And I will turn it over to the board chair if I can find him. There's a lot of people on this little Zoom.
I'm here.
Ah.
Okay, that was really heartwarming to hear, and it really, I wish we were together in person to do this, to hear the applause together. Last week, the executive order allowing for remote meetings was extended. That's why we're able to do this tonight, but I would like this board to consider getting back together at this point and doing these meetings in person. This one would have been ideal to have been face-to-face with all of these amazing retirees. In addition to everything that's going on here, I want to remind everyone of what's going on in Hartford and the June 14th webinar, education and funding, pandemic legislation, minority teacher recruitment, retention, and task forces is all still going on. And I want to urge some of our board members to attend that. And that's all I've got for tonight. I'm going to pass it right back over to you, Dr. De Silva.
Thank you. It is a busy evening, and I only have one thing on my agenda for tonight, and that is if we could to take a moment of silence on behalf of a faculty member that lost his life, Raymond Wynn, this past weekend in a tragic car accident. He truly has impacted so many individuals here at the Ridgefield Public Schools. When I communicated out this weekend to our faculty, it was clear that he's made an impression on so many folks. So blessings to his family and friends. And if we could just take a moment. And that's it for me tonight, Jonathan.
Thank you. Moving on to committees. We had budget finance last week. Ken, you want to provide us an update?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a pretty good agenda last week. We did get to speak to Dr. Silva in reference to Robert Fitzpatrick, who is with our insurance carrier, and he sort of broke down the budgeting process, and we had some questions for that, and we will be revisiting sort of the timing of the budget numbers that he provides with him. We got to speak about the budget for technology Dr. DeSantis gave us a very quick presentation on that. The majority of the meeting was taken up with the insurance discussion. Ms. Thornton did provide the financial report ending April 30th, 2021. We discussed our transfers, and then we got an update on the unbudgeted COVID-19 expenses.
Thank you. And strategic planning committee meeting was right after that. I know we took a step back to be able to take a step forward. You want to take us through that?
Absolutely. And so the main gist of the meeting that we had was to set up the framework on which we could hang our discussions. And what we did is we looked at a draft of a planning document, which will allow us, to organize our thoughts and the projects that the strategic planning committee should be addressing. It helps us outline our strategies with the guiding questions that will help us move the projects forward. We discussed specifically on enrollment. Our next steps for that is we're going to be getting a presentation from the middle schools regarding the impact of enrollment and the impact, on the students' learning. The learning experience with transportation. We're going to be studying the opt-in, opt-out so that we can determine the challenges, the strengths and the challenges of that, and then seeing if we can identify any opportunities for any cost optimizations there. Very briefly, we discussed pay to play, and that was actually determined that was going to be better addressed by the board as a whole rather than specifically by the strategic planning committee. And that took us all the way up to the end of our meeting.
Thank you. And that pay to participate is not yet agended for the Board of Ed, but we'll look to put that in the upcoming months.
Right, exactly.
Liaisons and representative, any liaison or representative reports for this evening? I don't believe Sean.
We did have a prevention council meeting last week, and they are setting a monthly schedule coming up. So I'm just asking everybody to stay tuned to social media for monthly events from them.
Thank you. Okay, we can move on to approval of minutes, starting with the March 25th special meeting number 1. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the March 25th, 2021 special meeting 1.
Do I have a second? Kathleen. Are there any questions, comments, revisions to these minutes? All in favor of approving the minutes for March 25th, 21 special meeting number 1? That's everyone. Okay. Motion carries. Now approval to March 25th special meeting number 2. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the March 25th, 2021 special meeting 2.
Do I have a second? Ken. Any revisions, adjustments to the minutes to this meeting? Being none, all in favor of approving the minutes for the special meeting number 2? Unanimous, thank you. And moving on to approval of the minutes to the April 5th meeting. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the regular meeting held on April 5th, 2021.
Do I have a second? Kathleen. Revisions, corrections? Rachel.
On the top, just minor, underneath where it says April 5th, instead of special board meeting, I think it should say regular board meeting.
I think you're right. Let me just double check. No, it's a special meeting. It replaced the meeting that was going to be on the second Monday because that date was during spring break. So it was a special meeting.
Oh, okay, then the motion, then we should say in the motion, I think a special meeting. Should
The
I
special meeting.
amend
You want to revise the
then?
motion?
Sure, so to amend, I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the special meeting held on April 5th, 2021. Thank you.
Thanks. Second. Kathleen, any corrections to the minutes themselves? Good catch, Rachel. Being none, all in favor of approving the minutes from the special meeting of April 5th? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to our first discussion and possible action item, the curriculum update for phonics.
Okay, so I will turn this over to Ms. Gillette and Ms. Johnson, who are joining us tonight. You may remember 2 weeks ago, we spoke about phonemic awareness. Now we're transitioning a little bit to another part of early literacy, which is called phonics. And Ms. Gillette and Linda will provide a framework of what this is going to look like, right? What this looks like right now and what we expect it to look like come fall. So Corey, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. John, we're ready for the slides. Great. All right. Okay, next slide, please. So tonight, Linda Johnson and I will update the board on the district's process to select a new phonics approach using a collaborative action team. But before we do that, we want to take a moment to share how phonics fits in with the comprehensive literacy approach. So as Dr. De Silva mentioned, the last time we were together, I was asked about the approach that we use for literacy instruction. So my goal tonight is to provide that overview in the context of this update on the phonics curriculum resource selection. So there are 5 essential components of reading instruction, as described by the National Reading Panel. Phonemic awareness, which we discussed last time, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. And all of these elements are included in reading instruction in the Ridgefield Public Schools. Oh my goodness.
How fast can you read? Let's see how those worked out for you.
Okay, next slide, thank you. Okay. So when all of the essential components are included in the curriculum, that is called a comprehensive literacy approach. So as I mentioned, last time we talked about the blue triangle there, I guess the light blue triangle, phonemic awareness, and tonight we're going to be looking at phonics. But before I get into that, I was just saying that in Ridgefield Public Schools, all of these elements are included in our reading curriculum. The other thing that's really important to understand about a comprehensive literacy approach is that assessment plays a big part. Teachers regularly assess students on how they're responding to this comprehensive literacy approach using curriculum-based assessments and standardized assessments. If students are not responding or not making adequate progress, then we do additional assessments, see where the struggle is, and then if needed, we provide targeted learning goals. And that oftentimes occurs during an intervention. Next slide. So the comprehensive literacy approach is supported by curriculum resources. And the design of this graphic is to help show you that for each of these 5 elements, we use different curriculum resources to support that instruction. Oh, no, I'm still there. Back up, thank you. So when you think about a curriculum resource, one of the curriculum resources that's been discussed is the curriculum, the TC reading units from Heinemann. That is a curriculum resource that we use to support comprehension and instruction. Now I'm ready to move to the next slide. Okay, thank you. So it's important to understand that there's a difference between curriculum and a curriculum resource. So the curriculum functions as our roadmap for teaching the standards, essential questions, and enduring understandings. The resource is used to help us deliver that instruction. We look to the resource to help us find lessons and content that best meet the needs of the district and the learning goals of the students in front of us. So you can see that I used here as an example of the curriculum resource, the phonemic awareness resource that we are implementing in the fall from Hegarty. So the resource, like the phonemic awareness resource from Hegarty, is not the curriculum. Another way to think about that is to think about the role of a math textbook in a math course. The textbook is not the curriculum. The math textbook helps support the day-to-day learning, but teachers look at the curriculum goals and then go into the textbook to find the lessons that best support the standards based on the curriculum. So finally, oops, there we are. So tonight, what we're looking at and what Linda is going to share with us is how we are looking to find a resource that will fit in the inner circle here of this pie, to find a curriculum resource that we can all consistently use across all the elementary schools to provide systematic phonics instruction. So Linda is going to talk about the process that we are going about in selecting this research-based systematic phonics curriculum resource. Again, it's going to be adopted by all 6 elementary schools.
Great, thanks, Corey. John, we can just stay there for a minute, please. Great, thank you. So good evening, everyone. The next part of our presentation does focus on the process we are following to reach a decision about adopting and eventually implementing a systematic, research-based approach to teaching and learning phonics. As Corey mentioned, our teachers have been teaching phonics as part of our comprehensive literacy approach. Now we are looking at bringing consistency across the 6 elementary schools by implementing the same primary curriculum resource. Okay, John, we can go to the next slide, please. Great. So this spring, a collaborative action team, also referred to as CAT, was formed with a very clear purpose. And that purpose was to study, explore, and again, eventually recommend a research-based phonics resource that relies on the Orton-Gillingham instructional approach. What you see here are the guiding principles that our team is following, and I will talk about this evening. This comes from these characteristics come from a very well-known leader in our educational world named Rick DeFore. He has done quite a bit of work with developing collaborative teams. Next slide, please. Great, thanks, John. So members of the team include representation from our 6 elementary schools. We have teachers of general and special education, PK through grade 2, administrators, literacy interventionists, and literacy coaches. Designated times are scheduled for meetings with a clear purpose and process for working together. For example, learning new information about research-based practices or discussing feedback on shared experiences. We also have a system in place for how members of the team can share out information, share out learning with colleagues who are not members of the CAT. For instance, we established a Google Classroom where we have recordings of our meetings, recordings of workshops, information posted, literature posted, so that members of the team can easily access those resources and share them out with their colleagues, either the grade level colleagues or we share out with our administrative team. Next, I would like to describe the process the team is following in terms of looking at a study and then making recommendations. The first part focuses on studying 2 phonics curriculum resources named Phonics First and Foundations. I will talk more about them in a little bit. This spring, the team participated in what we're calling an awareness workshop or an overview workshop, during which a staff developer from each company met with the team and provided information about the multisensory approach the program, the resource uses in teaching phonics, their systematic scope and sequence, teaching and assessment resources, and of course, student practice materials and activities. After each workshop, the team members completed a feedback form, giving us feedback, their thoughts around these targeted areas. And then their feedback has been discussed at subsequent meetings, during which we discussed the pros and cons, challenges, interests of the different programs that we're learning about. And then eventually we will refer to team feedback to make recommendations. And that leads me to the other part here, making recommendations. Another part of the process does involve coming together and making recommendations around a program choice, and then what that implementation plan will include. And part of deciding which program we would like to implement, we do plan to collaborate with neighboring districts who have a similar profile as our district. We do hope to visit these neighboring districts in the fall, where we could possibly see a lesson in action or talk with our colleagues around their experiences with using Foundations or Phonics First. And again, we'll take all of this information that we're learning about and experiencing along the way, come up with a recommendation for that program choice. Just one more second, John, going back to that last slide. Thank you. Program choice, and then putting together an implementation plan. I'm going to talk a little bit more about making recommendations and what that implementation plan might look like when I talk about next steps. Okay, John, thank you. So why did we choose these two resources to take a look at, to study? We chose these two curriculum resources for the following reasons. Both resources rely on the Orton-Gillingham approach, which provides a direct, explicit, multisensory structured way to teaching and assessing phonics skills. Each resource follows a systematic scope and sequence that includes decoding and encoding lessons. And also the message during instruction in both programs is to support the transfer of skills and strategies to the other elements of the comprehensive literacy approach that Corey spoke about earlier. And as I mentioned earlier, we are planning and hoping to visit districts who had that similar profile so that we could see these resources being implemented with students. So next steps, what's going to happen next? In terms of next fall, our goals will continue around studying the resources, studying the materials, again, hoping to have a visit to neighboring districts, and then we will put together our recommendations. And we're planning to have recommendations in place by the end of the first trimester. Our recommendations will include which resource to adopt, a timeline for implementation that possibly could begin during the 22-23 school year. And the implementation plan will also include a timeline for when we would like to implement in each grade level. For example, do we plan to implement in all 4 grade levels at once? Or will we have a staggered implementation plan where we might implement the new resource 2 grade levels at a time? We don't know the answers to those questions quite yet. That will come with the team's recommendations. And the timeline, along with plans for professional learning, will be part of what the team recommends. Again, hopefully looking towards the end of the fall, the end of the first trimester. And we thank you for your time and attention, and we look forward to your questions and comments.
All right.
Thank you for that presentation. It was very, very clear and well thought out. Any questions or comments from board members? Sean, you want to start us off?
Just a comment, not a question. I'm just glad we're focusing on this part of the curriculum. I know we've underinvested in curriculum for some time. I know that literacy instruction has been a sore spot for a lot of parents. So I'm glad we're doing this deep a dive into this end of the curriculum this early. I think this is the first part that really needed this level of attention.
Thank you.
I'll add on to that. I'm sorry to hear that it will take as long as till the 22-23 school year to get started with this, but I'm glad that we're doing it the right way and taking the time as opposed to trying to put a Band-Aid on an issue and trying to do something too fast. So that I appreciate the approach.
And I think thank you for that. And I think it's also important to remember that last time when we talked about the implementation of phonemic awareness, that is our focus for the fall. And because it's such a foundational, important part of this pie that we're trying to illustrate our approach with, we really don't want to rush that. And so it's really two things happening simultaneously. It's the implementation of the new phonemic awareness resource, which we were really trying to differentiate between a resource and a curriculum that's going to be consistent and aligned across all schools. And then while we're doing that, we're basically wrapping up the cat and coming up with recommendations for the next step for phonics. So it really would have been very challenging, and I would be nervous if we were doing those two things at once. So it might seem like one is later than the other, but do know that we're laying the foundation with the first resource implementation work in the fall.
Other comments or questions? I think the lack of comments just speaks to the clarity of the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Next up is the summer bridge update.
Yes, so both Corey and Dr. Hanaway have been hard at work alongside school-based leaders and school-based educators, and Ms. Johnson looking at the content of Bridge Program, and Eric and many others. So tonight they're going to give a brief update on where we are. I shared this before, but hopefully on the user side, what parents have felt is that this is incredibly inviting and ready to go. On the other side, I know that our team is working diligently day and night to ensure that our children have a great experience and that it's meaningful. So now I'll turn it over to Dr. Hanaway. I think is going to start us off to give us a quick update.
Actually, I'm going to let Corey start it off because, that literacy one was way shorter than we expected. So she's going to get to go first.
Yeah. Okay. So we did share in the memo with all of you the numbers of students that the Bridge program is serving this summer. We are proud to be serving almost 1,300 current Ridgefield Public School students this summer as we extend their school year. And when we were putting this together, I was very confident that people would have a good response, but I don't think any of us realized that the response would be quite as huge as it has been. Our directors have been really hard at work with the registration process, which is really the confirmation of registration. And that involves making sure that we have enough staff and enough spacing. So we do want the elementary parents to be patient with us as we are accepting students into the different sessions. We have a running wait list, and we are filling that as parents perhaps made other plans. But we seem to be very close to accomplishing our main goal, which is making sure that all students who are registered and who registered during the registration timeframe are able to go to a session of the Bridge program. And I have to say, I'm personally super excited that the high school intensives response is up to, I think, almost 130 students. That was something that I was personally very invested in, getting high school kids back into that session. And so our work in these next few weeks is helping parents learn more about the logistics, the day-to-day drop-off, snacks, sunscreen, all those good things, and developing the curriculum and getting materials in place. And of course, then getting buildings ready as we transition one group out and then another group in within 2 days. Dr. Hanaway, you want to add in?
Yeah, I would just add that we have been cognizant of working with the Boys and Girls Club in specific because of the proximity to Veterans Park and ERMS. So we've had multiple meetings with Mike Flynn, over the Boys and Girls Club around combining efforts for high school volunteers. They have a leadership academy, and how can we leverage those supports, to thinking about how to help kids transition if they're leaving our program and getting across the street, to making sure that the traffic is not overwhelming depending on our timing of day and utilization of space. So I'm really grateful to them for being patient with us, because this is their wheelhouse as compared with ours. I'm also really excited that we just have a great array of students attending with us, as far as participation across ages, but also needs. We have, students who require different types of accommodations who are participating, and a lot of families who have been inquiring around how they can be supportive to us as well with ideas for programming. But luckily, we've been inundated. In addition, at the elementary level, similar to at the high school, how we have intensives, the elementary has the opportunity to have, essentials that are not as typical as they would normally have during the year. We have teachers doing STEM lessons on a weekly basis. We have teachers doing mindfulness and yoga-based lessons. We have teachers teaching American Sign Language, just a lot of outside the box ideas, and then just straight fun outside. Honestly, a lot of this is just kids having fun outside and inside to the degree that we can. So a lot of really creative thinking going on by the co-directors at each level. So they're doing yeoman's work, vast majority of it, honestly, on a day-to-day basis.
Any questions?
So more than a quarter of the student body is participating in the summer bridge program.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty amazing.
That is amazing.
And I'll just plug that we also have another 270 kids attending extended school year across town.
Any questions from board members?
No,
Other than how did you do
I
this?
applaud the work. I applaud the work and finding a need and doing something meaningful. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything from other board members? It's really outstanding. I appreciate it. We all do. Okay, how about planning for fall opening, Dr. De Silva?
Yep, so this one's Dr. Hanaway as well. Dr. Hanaway will describe what's happening with the ESSER 3 grant. It's quite complicated and there's many layers. One of the, outside of some of the complication and the many layers, one of the unfortunate pieces is that we're receiving a lot less money than originally anticipated. You might remember that there was a $1.4 million number thrown out there. The actual number, which is in your memo, is under $1 million. It's $982,772. And Dr. Hanaway will actually speak tonight about the layers between ESSER 3 and the opening of school for the fall and how those pieces come together. So why don't you kick it off, Dr. Hanaway?
Sure. So as described in the memo, this is the third release of relief monies as a result of bills passed in Congress. And so this is intended for schools to use. The first release of ESSER monies was to survive. The second was to thrive. And this is intended to be used to transform schools. I think it's just, that's cute, but the truth of the matter is they really do have high expectations with this third round of monies, that we engage the public in a way that hasn't necessarily been required with the former two. So it's a little bit awkward because the sequence of events typically in how grants go is you fill out a grant application that meets the requirements of the grant, and then you get released money. Well, this is going to have a bit of a opposite timeline, in that we are going to get monies released to us before we put a plan and enact a plan out there publicly. And so we're going to have to continue to update the board in terms of what the timing of that is. I honestly don't know. We are required to post a plan publicly for how we intend to use the money. And it's going to be an extension of what we are already doing. And the previous ESSER II grant that the district submitted focused heavily on supporting students with learning loss. And that's what this one will do as well. It's required in this grant that we use at least 20% of it towards supporting students with learning loss. But I predict that we're going to use a tremendous amount more for that. So the process will be that we will create a draft plan. We will engage the community in feedback about how we intend to use those monies. And then the plan will be public. And we're required to revise it, review it, and potentially revise it every 6 months, depending on our needs. We have to expend the funds. We have until 2024 to use the monies. So it has an overlapping effect with the previous monies that have been released as well. I think Bridge is one piece of what we're looking at, but I think also looking outside of Bridge as it relates to supporting students with learning loss within the actual school year, whether it be within the school day or potentially outside the school day. So our minds are open about how to be creative around that. At the same time, we will be working on a plan to operationalize the return to school in the fall. Very reduced process as compared with last summer. So to quote Sean, we will not need as more people than needed to plan the invasion of Normandy for this time around. Don't think I forgot that, Sean. But we will be creating a plan that is going to be heavily on operations and logistics, because the teaching and learning piece we're hoping can really just kind of go back to the normal protocols that the district would do between the buildings and central office. So it's going to have a lot to do with what our safety mitigation practices will be at that point, once school opens again, and then how we will ebb and flow and what our general plan is to be flexible if our public health situation changes. We're hoping it's as minimal as possible. We will be seeking public feedback. We are going to open up a variety of avenues for public feedback and input on the design of the plan, but we're not going to be running the committee structures this summer. It's just not necessary, as we had done in previous summers. So the two things will be happening at the same time. Just a plan for the return to school in the fall, as well as a public plan on how we would intend to use the ESSER III grant monies.
So just if I can, Dr. Hanaway, slightly connected, is that as of right now, we have not received guidance from the State Department of Ed on what the expectations would be like for the fall. So as families know, late Thursday, I believe, we received a new notice from the State Department of Ed that said, okay, if you're outside and you're actively moving, you don't need to wear masks. So as things come up, obviously, we're starting to think about those circumstances and what they mean for our kids and for the opening of fall. But that is a critical piece that at this point we're missing, because if we had that information, which I understand why perhaps we don't at this point, we would already have a plan in place. But pending that, we're running a few parallels, writing this grant with a plan for the fall and collecting feedback, but yet not having guidance from the state in terms of the fall. One other piece that is a part of the ESSER III that's not a part of ESSER II is Priority 5, which is building safe and healthy schools. So as you know, we're receiving less than $1 million here. There are some communities, neighboring communities, the inner cities, that are receiving $100 million. For those schools, they have the ability to perhaps look at HVAC and things like that, that our circumstances are slightly different in terms of the amount of money that we're receiving and where we would potentially like to focus that money. There's a big part of this, though, and we've spoken about this at length. It is hard at this moment in time to determine where we would like to prioritize the funding. So as Dr. Hanaway said, yes, Bridge for 2022 seems like it makes sense, but ultimately extending the day, whether that's in the morning, in the afternoon, social emotional health, all of that, we really have to have the opportunity to assess kids. And so looking at September, October, perhaps even early November, to get a good understanding of where our children are and what their needs are, will then help guide perhaps where these monies will go. So when we write the grant, it will include different components that we just described, but we hope not to box ourselves in so much so that we can't modify and adjust based on the needs of our kids and needs of our faculty, whether that's academically or emotionally. Part of the plan also, which as most know, is that the State Department of Ed has said that they will not be requiring school districts to offer a virtual learning experience for students based on health and safety reasons. So part of the discussion in future meetings is going to be, okay, we've learned a lot from this year. What might this look like? And again, guidance from the state. Or if we have to put children into quarantine, what might that look like? What are the programs or structures we want to have in place? What's available to kids? What's not available to kids? What's available to families? What's not available to families? Quite frankly, simple topics such as snow days. And if we want to go venture down that snow hole, at some point we do need to discuss that so that we can manage families' expectations as well. And so those are topics that are going to be coming in the month of June, so that we can create this plan and really have a common understanding on the part of the administration, the Board of Education, and most certainly the family community, so that they can plan ahead. And we'll take questions.
Any questions from board members on the fall planning? Kathleen?
Dr. De Silva, I think you answered this. In terms of the 20% for learning loss, I may be jumping the gun, but thinking about it, there's a couple of ways to look at it. Would it be after assessment targeted instruction, or would it be holistic assumption that everyone had learning loss? So, I mean, there'd be ways to look at it. I don't know if you've even gotten to that point to consider it.
I would say that we've looked at all of those considerations, whether or not it's students who are meeting grade level expectations, students who are already above grade level expectations, but haven't made the growth that we might expect them to have made, right? Because they were above, and what the opportunities are. What we're really being thoughtful about is we don't want to supplant, right? So I also don't want to put the district in a budget hole by hiring additional staff to support kids during the school day, because what's going to happen is a year or two from now, we're either going to be laying off staff, or we're going to be asking the Board of Education to support a budget that we didn't intend to. So we really want to be thoughtful about what that looks like for kids. And so Kathleen, yes, it could certainly include kids that perhaps are still at grade level, but did have learning loss based on where they were. And also kids that are falling below and just haven't had the opportunity to make up. The one thing we know about kids is that, it's like almost that quote unquote summer slide, if that's even a real thing. Sometimes kids appear to have a summer slide, and then they get back into the groove of school, give them an opportunity to have some structure, some routine, and children learn. And so giving us some time to really have opportunities to teach, opportunities to assess, and then make determinations thereafter. Because there's also a reality that some kids may not be available prior to school starting or after the school day ends, right? And how are we targeting the work that they're receiving day to day? And so what the board can expect is us to provide a really clear picture based on what we know when we should know it. And so right now, I think it's too early to judge. And even with Bridge that's happening over the summer, there is absolutely an unintentional consequence that we want, which is kids to have gained some academic experience. But the real intentional goal of Bridge is to get kids back into a school experience with their peers, to socialize, to re-engage, to have fun, and to connect in ways that they wouldn't otherwise connect in a larger group, right? Not a friendship group. So, but the unintentional consequence is that kids will learn. And so while not quite as intentional as we're expecting once we have some assessment data, I think there is some unintentionality there that it will have a positive outcome on student learning.
Thank you.
Other board questions? You can handle last fall. You can handle this coming fall.
Should. Now we're in trouble.
Okay, moving on. Next up is open choice.
So I provided the Board of Education with a memo. I really worked to go back to January 25th in the discussion around open choice, think back to the notes, and was intending to provide the board with more than I actually could. And so at that board meeting on January 25th, you may remember that the board said, okay, we're gonna look at open choice in 3 parts. The first part is the benefit to students. The second part, which wouldn't be tonight, at a next meeting would be financial implications, and then subsequent to that would be next steps. And so what was hard about this is that, and I know that this board and many boards are looking at quantitative data. Is there data that can help us understand what the benefit would be to students who are coming into the district, or from the sending district or from the receiving district? And so from my perspective, I really wasn't able to give you as much as I would have liked. There is one study that's back from 2015. And as you notice in my memo, the focus of that study was really on the sending students, and it was connected to, at that time, standardized testing, which was the CMT. Now, open choice has been called many things in many communities. And so there may be other studies that were completed prior to 2015. I think they called the program at one point project choice or things like that. I couldn't exactly run the parallel, so I elected not to do that. That said, what I also included in the memo for the board to look at is the link to the State Department website, which you've seen before. I also reached out to Durgay to find out where they were with open choice, and you'll notice they were either yes planning, currently receiving kids, or possibly it's still under review, similar to Ridgefield. Lastly, not a direct through line, and I also acknowledge that in my memo, I included some other information. I gave you some demographic information because actually the goal is to reduce racial, ethnic, and economic differences or isolation. So I included that for you, along with some data on free and reduced lunch, a recent position statement on culturally responsive education from the State Department of Ed and their goals in looking at schools and the responsibility of schools. And then lastly, an act concerning minority teacher recruitment and retention. Again, not a direct through line, but to at least provide you with some context in having the discussion tonight. And so off you go, and I'm here to provide any additional information that I may be able to have or may have.
Liz?
Yeah, I just have a comment and a question. So I also dug around and did as much research as I could find about the 50 years that the esteemed representative from the state talked about in his presentation regarding the open choice program. And I find it absolutely fascinating that despite my inquiries personally to several people, both the cooperative education services as well as at the state level, that literally the only report is the one that Dr. De Silva shared. So for 50 years, this program has been called magnet schools, open choice, whatever moniker the political scene wants to put on it. Yet there is literally no quantitative or data-based results provided to any Board of Education that's entering into these agreements. And I know we're talking about the financial components in the next thing, so I'll hold my comments there. But I find it extremely telling that this program has been around for decades and has literally no academic or social, emotional, or any other metric associated with it, except for 2 years of data for 4 cities with 89 students. And for 50 years, we've been saying that this is helping people, that this is helping students. And not once during that 50 years did anyone deign to bother to measure it. So for that, I say, you know what? There is no benefit to the students that are in it because there's no proof of that benefit. And there's no benefit to the districts that are receiving it because there's no proof of that. I follow data and I look at data. We use data for all of our other metrics. And my guess is the reason there's no data is because there is no benefits, because otherwise they'd be lauding that data and showing the benefits to the communities, both sending and receiving students, which for 50 years, this program has been running in Connecticut and has none of that to prove that it's of any value to anybody. So I'll just stop there and say thank you for sharing the same report I found, Dr. De Silva. I did a ton of research on this. I tried to find other states that are doing it. I went to the state, I went to CES, and there is literally no data. So with that, I close my comments.
Liz, I appreciate your comments, and I too am, shall I say, underwhelmed with the data that's able to be provided. Not with anything. I'm not making a judgment at this point. I'm just saying that there is a paucity of data around either the benefit to the sending district students or to the receiving district. That said, I haven't made my mind up, but I, like you, am a little disappointed in the amount of data that is available at this point. Sean, I see your hand.
Yeah, just one quick follow-up. But the one report that we do have in 50 years with the data actually shows the open choice program underperforming and actually hurting students in one of these metrics. The best approach appears to be magnet schools operated by the RESCs or public charter schools. Now, that being said, the reason we're supposedly doing this, just to bring it back to the original meeting, was because of overcrowding in Danbury. They have 11,507 students in the last census that I was able to find. But they are building a huge complex at the Matrix, a wonderful STEM school, but they turned down a 700 student charter school, which would have solved some of this problem. But that being said, charter school aside, they're building 20% more capacity in their schools. So when you bring it down to the base level, overcrowding really isn't a problem or the problem, and us taking in a handful of kids isn't going to solve that. And this program can only support 50 kids from Danbury. So that $1.5 million, if it was my kids and my district, that $1.5 million can solve a lot of problems for 11,507 kids. And it doesn't feel like a creepy lottery that helps a half dozen kids or doesn't help, according to this report. Just the fact that we want to hinge a couple of kids' success or not on this data and not help 11,507 kids is troubling to me. If their district has problems, that goes a long way to help them.
So those are good points. And I think we did note that the speakers that did join us in January spoke about overcrowding being a driver. But when I went back to the open choice program as it was listed on the Connecticut state site, it says it's an interdistrict public school program intended to improve academic achievement, reduce racial, ethnic, and economic isolation, and provide a choice of educational programs for public school students. So for our purposes, I think it might be most valuable for us to look at that middle piece of reducing racial, ethnic, and economic isolation, and whether or not this would be a program that would be helpful in that manner.
We've already got a program in district that's very successful in the ABC program. Let's triple that.
Well, where are the metrics that this does anything for
Right.
racial diversity or ethnicity? I'd like to see any study, any KPIs, any metrics that support that statement, because they are not available from the state or from CES.
No, they're not. We'd have to find them elsewhere. I agree.
I mean, I will.
Gina?
This is me as a person of color, and I have a huge problem. Keep saying this is adding racial diversity. There are racially diverse people and children in our community. So when we keep saying that because if you're different or you look different, you're welcome, you're kind of starting a narrative that is wrong in the beginning. I understand economic diversity. I understand rural versus urban. I am completely in support of that. But when we keep highlighting racial diversity, it almost becomes like, because if you look different, you're welcome, we're doing something good for you. So for this, I mean, I've talked to a bunch of people in our town who are racially, are persons of color. And I think they all kind of feel, I don't want to use the word offended, but it's a strong point that comes across. So I think when we talk about this, I have not made up my mind, as you've said, because of the lack of data. I can go either ways. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to learn. But I do say when we talk about this in our district, I understand the economic diversity. I completely get it. I have no problems with that. I understand, urban schools work differently from our schools because they're local elementaries. There's less, there's student to teacher ratio is better, all that, the opportunities that we provide. But I think I do, when we keep saying racial diversity, this is how this will open up, because it also leads to the next question. This is me, maybe I don't know how this works, but when let's say we do go with this and the lottery is open, are we going to, is the sending district going to do a lottery dependent on how these kids, their ethnic background? So that's
No.
another question. I didn't understand that.
No, that I do know, at least unless the information changed. But the way in which the lottery works in whichever community they're a part of, the children are a part of, it's open to everyone. Okay. And so it truly is a lottery. So you may end up having children that are not children of color or perhaps not as economically disadvantaged as other children within that same community. So I did ask that question very specifically, and that was a variable, at least at that time, unless it, it could evolve as the program, first of all, gets approved, and then secondly, develops. But that variable is actually eliminated as it is designed right now. Just the one point I just want to clarify in terms of magnets and or charters is that it is somewhat reversed, so that everyone is just coming into the discussion and the with the same knowledge. So traditionally in a magnet school, it's the inner city school, and the receiving children are those coming from suburban communities. So for example, if you're in the city of Waterbury and you're in a magnet school, it's open by lottery to the city children, and then they take in a small population from each of the surrounding suburban communities. So it's structured a bit differently. And so it's not exactly, unfortunately, when we're comparing, it's not exactly apples to apples. So I think we do have to look at the model of open choice as a model of open choice, as opposed to connecting it. And I know that the charters and the magnets were there and were connected, but it's unfortunate because they are different.
So a couple, Dr. De Silva, your memo points out that Darien and Weston have both agreed to move forward with, they haven't participated in the program in the past, but they are going forward.
So yes, I reached out to all the communities that are part of our district reference group. And so Darien is planning to move forward. Obviously, they're waiting for the same information that most districts are, because it's not final, but there is a plan to move forward. In the same with Weston. The difference in Weston, when I communicated with the superintendent there, is they intend on reviewing the program each year, not for the children that are already in the program, but in order to receive new children. That's just going to basically be on an enrollment, right? So if they're accepting kindergarten children in for the following year, before they accept kindergarten children in for the following year, if they're going to look at their class sizes to determine if it makes sense to do so before they accept them. So they're going to continue to review each July, or at least that's their plan, should this move forward, before continuously accepting, let's just say. And from what I understand, there's not an obligation to continuously accept. So you could accept 1 year, and then if you elected to continue because your enrollment was down, let's just say, you could. Whereas if your enrollment increased, you could say, no, not this year.
Were you able to get a feel from either of those two districts as to why they chose to move forward with joining the program?
Not outside of what I learned from their board meetings. And ultimately, I think they are looking to receive more diverse populations, right? And I think we all know the benefits of diversity, whether that's diversity based on the color of our skin or diversity based on our ideas or perspective. And, there is strength in that. And for communities where there isn't a significant amount of diversity, or small amounts of diversity, that is ultimately, I think, why, at least I can speak for Darien, why they're considering bringing them in.
Well, I understand that, but that's feelings, not data. So I just want to reiterate that the feelings around diversity are great. And we all should seek out diversity of thought and diversity of experience and diversity of opinion and diversity of background and religion and thought processes and all those things. Not one of those things is in any piece of data that says it benefits the sending or the receiving students. And so, while it's very nice to talk about, it is not based on facts. It's based on perspectives and opinions that I think we need to be really clear on, because the goal of today's meeting is to talk about the benefits of the students. And I'll tell you, only one of my children goes to the RHS schools, and one goes to a school that has natural geographic and other diversity concepts. And guess what? There's no data on that either. It's just, it's a talking point. It's not a data point of 50 years. And if our goal here is, as Mr. Steckler stated, which was stated by the state as well, they're not even measuring that this is doing anything of positive for any of these students. I mean, a student going to be driving 50 miles or 20 miles or 50 minutes to come to a school and then not be a part of that community going home because they've got to drive 50 minutes, because I experience that on a regular basis. It's hard to make friends and make social connections when you don't live in the local school district that you're in, regardless of what that looks like, urban, suburban, or otherwise. And so I would really question that this creates a positivity. It is the academic component that's in this study. It's not anything about the social, emotional diversity, any of the things that we were just talking about. So that's a feeling that administrators might have. It may be a feeling that these other Board of Educations voted on. I haven't watched their meetings, but it is not backed up by any big data that I can find. So I'd love for somebody to show me where it helps with what and with what.
So that's a good question. And we can look into maybe adding that to the next meeting is a discussion around what is the value of diversity in a student population, because while there may not be quantitative data in front of us tonight, I do feel like there may be qualitative reasons and emotional reasons why it would be of benefit to our students to be part of a more diverse group of.
And how do you define diversity, Jonathan? This particular, what measures would you like to see data on?
I didn't hear what the last part.
Definitions of diversity that you're referring to.
Well, we could go back to the reducing racial, ethnic, and economic isolation. If you look at the numbers.
You want racial diversity, ethnic diversity, and which
one?
Economic diversity.
Yes.
Okay, I'd love to see metrics for those things and studies that show that 50 years of this program have done anything to positively impact either the sending or receiving students.
I'd also be open to studies around those ideas, not part of this program necessarily.
I'm not.
Okay.
I think it's important that we remember that there are two sections of students here. So while yes, we have to, it's important to look at the benefits that our students will receive, but we have to also look at the impact on the other students, the students that are coming into our district. And I think some of those points are what Liz brought up. You know, what kind of experience are they going to have, because their experience is as important, frankly, if not more important than the experience of our students. So there are two group populations being affected here, and I think it's important to remember what's the effect on the incoming students as well as the students that are already here.
Kenneth, did you just to reiterate, I thought I heard you say that students elsewhere outside of other districts are a higher priority for us than our own students in our Ridgefield district?
No, when we're discussing that, everybody froze too. I said when we're discussing this, so one of the things that we keep talking about is the benefits to our students of diversity, but there's going to be an impact on the students that are coming here also, and I think that needs to be part of the discussion also.
Okay, I thought you said that was more important than our students in our own district. I must have misunderstood. Thank you.
No, just the impact to the students coming in could be greater than the impact of the students that are here already.
The piece that Liz brought up about the length of time it takes for children to arrive at school and the extracurriculars is a real thing that should the board go in that direction, and they've outweighed the pros and the cons, that there is some type of commitment, whether that's just a community commitment, because that's a reality. Even though Danbury isn't as far as some other communities, it's late at night, you're on 84, or it's late in the afternoon, you're on 84. Kids have early morning events, whether that's orchestra, band, or intramurals, all those things that happen in schools. And so overall, if that is the one piece that is critical in this, is if the decision was to move forward and say, yes, this is something that we believe is of value, or yes, it's something we believe we want to give it a try, it is a full-fledged commitment, not only for the traditional day for the children, for before and after. It's also a commitment on the part of faculty. And that what I mean by that is helping faculty understand more about the children that are not part of their community, that, you know, that in what the dynamics might be. They're riding a bus longer in the morning. They're young. They're riding a bus a little bit later in the afternoon. Their diversity may come, you know, with a lot of professional learning that has to come with that, from different perspectives and different vantage points that they may not have had the experience. So it's far greater. And I hope that if this bill was to move forward, whether it's in our community or other communities, that there's a lot of discussion around those other elements and how they intend on supporting kids and also their families, because you can feel very isolated if you're not part of a community. But if the community embraces you, and I know that many communities anecdotally, you're right, Liz, it's not quantitatively, but anecdotally have had to really think those things through, because otherwise you're looking at a lot of isolation that can come. So.
Kathleen and then Kim.
It's really unfortunate that there aren't any studies on this on this program in Connecticut. But again, going back anecdotally, having worked in the independent school world in Manhattan and throughout the country and also in Fairfield County, that it's very common that they actively seek diverse students and families that come in, but they have the same, what Dr. De Silva was saying, unless it's handled very well in terms of a complete understanding and work in the community to include and look at the student's day beginning to end so that they can be included in extracurriculars, et cetera, it can be a very isolating experience. That being said, there are a lot of studies and things written about positive in the independent school world of having this diverse experience and economic, geographic, whatever. And I've seen it. I just went to my daughter's college graduation, and my goodness, the diverse community as I watched all the students just walk up. This is the world they're going to be living in.
Hi, Kathleen. Can I just ask for those studies that you're referencing about independent school districts and maybe perhaps some of the differences between a public school district and an independent one? I send my child to an independent school that is racially diverse, let's just say. And that's just one factor of any of that. And public schools and independent schools in Manhattan are a little bit different. And so I'd love to see the studies that you're referencing, because frankly, the public schools that have been running these open choice programs can't provide them. The state can't provide them. They're not based on tax dollars when you're looking at independent schools. And I'll pause that thought because I know it's on our next agenda. But let's be clear that independent schools are vastly different than public ones. And I think as someone who worked there, you can recognize those differences pretty dramatically. There's also commitment on the part of the parents, both in independent schools, as well as bringing someone for an hour plus or 50 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever outside their community. So I think we need to be really careful not to pull in independent schools into a public schools discussion unless there's hard data to back up what you're suggesting that compares apples to apples, because they're very different models.
I agree with you, and I think I said that, but I just think that there are models, and absolutely, but there anyway.
Tina?
Okay, I'm biracial. Trust me, I understand how important diversity is, how vital it is for our kids to understand the world that is beyond Ridgefield, right? I went to a school which was very diverse. It was a private school, but was very diverse. I have family all over the world, so I completely understand the need for diversity, the need to have different families. But I also want to go back to what Dr. De Silva said. You know, when we moved to this town about 7 or 8 years ago now, I think what made us, when you want to be part of the school, it's a community. As you said, it's being part of the elementary school community, it's being part of the middle school community, and same for the RHS. So yes, definitely, as Dr. De Silva pointed out, it is about the students, but it's also about the parents, right? When you want a child to be part of this community, you have to think about the parents, because I remember when I was new, we didn't know anyone. I have no family here. What embraced me was this community. And the reason it embraced me is because it could invest some time. So you have to understand that when we talk about this as when we talk about this large and financially, you have to think about the kids that will come in and their families, So yes, that I totally applaud. Thank you for mentioning that, Dr. De Silva. The child, the child is important. It's the key point here, but it's also their families. These are families who are not from our town, who probably, I'm going to highlight PTAs. PTAs are so integral to our community. They have after school events. That's how sports, everything. So there is, yes, I agree with points with everyone. What most of the points you've all highlighted, I agree, because I truly value diversity, economic diversity, racial diversity. Come on, you have to just look at me and my family background. But I do also want to highlight the parent part of it, because when I was the outsider, I understand how important it is for me to understand where my child was going. You want to know where a child is going, right? You want to understand. So if we do look at it, I think it is very important that we understand how will we make these parents become a part of our community, right? What will we do? And this is just my opinion, because we all have our own, no matter how, I agree with Liz, data is important, but we also have a personal point of view about this. We all will, it's natural, we will feel either way. It becomes personal, but that means our parents are watching and they obviously have views. So whenever we do this and we go ahead or not go ahead, I think it would be great if we can get some larger feedback from our stakeholders, because that's an important point to consider too, because these are kids we're welcoming and they're going to go with these kids, these families. If they have any concerns, it'll be good if we can talk about them openly, because while 9 of us do represent this community, I'm sure we, between us, could miss some points. Or there are things we haven't thought for, or maybe they're brand new people who moved to Ridgefield who have a completely different experience than what we have. And we are probably not hearing about this. And I just share this because I do know some families who have moved new and they have concerns which I wouldn't have thought of when I moved 8 years ago. So that's just something I keep want to saying, that yes, when we talk about it, yes, we can discuss as a group, but we also have to look at our large community, because they are going to be about it. And I know whenever you bring up the financial part of it, if there are implications or not, and that's going to influence this decision too. But as we go forward, as we move forward, I just wanted to highlight these 2 points. Beyond any, this is not personal, not my own. I won't share that. I want to talk about the community because that's what I remember. I'm here for the voice for everyone, or, as much as I can be. So sharing for them, giving them an opportunity so that we can listen to them. That was just a point.
I think it's a great point, Tina. The other ask I would have is if we could find some speakers or parents that have actually been through this kind of commuted program. And I mean, there's only 89 kids referenced in the study that we got that was 2 year, that didn't have any of that. But I would love to hear any kids that have been through it, any parents that have committed to this or been interested in it or not gotten in it and how they felt, whatever. But I mean, you can't find any of those testimonials either, which is really unfortunate.
Sean?
So.
Just a couple of random data points. One is if we're moving forward with something like this, that Weston one where every year you give a thumbs up, thumbs down. I said it before, if we're taking a kid in, we own them until graduation. Being clear, we can't bring them here, bring them up to whatever standards we have, perceiving that our educational model is better than what they have, which is why we're doing this, and then send them home. You can't do that. Secondly, our elementary schools are pretty full. So we're not talking about little kids here. We're talking about predominantly middle school and above, because that's really the only holes that I see in our demographics currently, unless we redistrict and then everything's up in the air. 3, we're coming back online from an ugly 18 months. Right now, we don't even know what we don't know. Fall is going to be challenging, resource-wise, teacher-wise, everything else. This is a distraction. Be very clear. If we have to go focus on this at the expense of our kids, it's a hard no. We gotta protect our kids first, bring them online. There's going to be a lot of supports needed psychologically, educationally, new curriculum, whatever, to make sure our kids are whole from what just happened. And then 4th, our community is about to undergo a fairly radical transformation. We're about to embark on 150 new units, including a lot of affordable housing of exactly the demographic we're talking about. That doesn't include anything that Hartford's about to push down in terms of revised zoning, which they're doing, be very clear. So we are going to have large multifamily developments in our residential areas in the next couple of years. So that needs to be factored into any decision process we have, is we're going to be forced into diversity, whether we like it or not, just because of zoning policy. So I'll leave it.
I just
That would
wanted
be
to,
interesting. I would be, go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to be sure that I didn't misspeak. With Weston, it's not that any children would have to go back. It would be if they were accepting new children each year. I just don't want anyone to have that impression. The second point that you brought up, about middle school age children, the intentionality of this program is to bring them in their kindergarten year. So just wanted to clarify those 2 points.
We have room in our elementary schools. We're at 95 to 98% capacity right now. And that doesn't account for any influx of New Yorkers that we keep hearing about.
So and by the way, just to be clear, this would be for 22-23. And so that's a good question, Sean. We'd have to look at what the—
I get it, but we're still going to be supporting our pandemic challenge kids in 22-23 with big time supports. I would prefer not to distract our team.
So I believe that our students would be better off if they were part of a more diverse group of students. I believe that that would give them a better chance of becoming the global citizens that is part of our vision of the graduate. I'm glad to hear that the town is doing something that might bring more diversity into the town. And actually, I'd be a little bit concerned if it fell just to the schools to add diversity to the student population without adding diversity to the teaching population, without adding diversity to the community as a whole. So I think all of those things do have to work together if it's going to work, but I'm just going to put it out there that I'm in favor of looking for ways that might help us have a more diverse student body.
And I just want to put it out there that diversity needs to be defined, and there needs to be data metrics that actually prove that this is beneficial to everyone involved, both the sending and the receiving districts, which after 50 years of a program still can't be done. It's still based on feelings and beliefs, not facts and figures. And with everything else in education, we're constantly measuring it. We measure the ruler of social emotional. We measure the rulers on standardized tests constantly, standardized tests, AP tests, every other test you can think of. Yet for some reason, this program continues to get funded and talked about as though it has positive benefit, yet no one seems it necessary to actually measure that, other to say it feels really good for the people that are putting it in. How does it feel for the kids and the parents, the ones that get in, the ones that don't? How does that feel? I didn't get picked on the lottery. I'm stuck in this district. No, you're not. You can move here too. And there are opportunities to do so for a lot of people. And there'll be more according to the zoning rules that are coming. So I can't imagine that after this many years in an educational program, educators are very academic and they do their studies. They do research papers. They're constantly getting additional certifications and degrees. Yet for some reason, this highly successful program has ignored all the data. That seems highly suspect. And yes, it feels good to talk about diversity. But the reality is there's no data to prove that this program, in the way it's currently written, has any benefit. The sending district keeps money. We get less grants. They keep their population. We pay for the students' education. And that student's parents is on the hook for getting them back and forth and being part of the community that they're not living in. And as someone, I will speak personally, that does that on a regular basis for a child that lives far away from where they actually go to school, it's not an easy road to hoe, even when you're not economically in a situation where that part's a problem. So especially for little kids, I would love to see some actual data there, because yeah, I agree. Diversity of thought, diversity of religion, diversity of background are really critical to the growth of a human being. But sending them to a school doesn't guarantee any of that. So with that, I'll say, I'd love to see some data. to agree with you, Jonathan, but I don't believe that this program is the way to get us there.
Can you provide some data to us on the value of diversity of thought and background and how that's different than diversity?
I'm not the one pushing for an open choice program to bring it in. So I can't find any from the state. I can't find any from
diversity.
So I can't find any that proves that the open choice program being presented here that's written by the state and supported here has any benefits at all.
Do you have any other potential replacements that would help us add diversity to the student population?
No, and that's not on the table today. What we're talking about is the open choice program provided by Connecticut that you said you believe helps people. And I'm asking you for data to prove it because it's been around for 50 years and no one can answer the question of what actual aspects of diversity it's solving and what the outcomes are, which is non-scientific for sure. And I believe in science and I believe in data. And I believe that there should be testimonials about how successful this program has been for anyone sending or receiving. And unfortunately, I've looked and looked and have yet to find any of that. So you can challenge me. I'm not the one proposing this program. I'm saying I'd like the data to support the program that you are putting on the agenda.
You all set now?
Are you?
No, I was waiting to respond.
I'm sorry. I thought, is it only you that gets the floor at meetings now?
No, I was just waiting until you're done and then I could speak.
Please feel free.
Okay, just to clarify a couple of misstatements from you. I did not say that I believed that open choice was a good program. I said I believed that diversity would be good for our students. I'm not sure that open choice is a good program. I can't find any data around the program. And that's where I agreed with you at the beginning of the meeting. Rachel.
Okay. So like all of you, I also did some research in preparation for this evening. I went to the CREC website, as maybe some of you have also did, and I watched a video on the open choice program and the history of Marjorie Little, who was the former employee and parent of Project Concern. That's what it was first called. And then it became Project Choice. She spoke very passionately about how the Hartford Board of Ed in 1964 heard about Project Concern for the first time. And then how Mary Carroll Kennedy, who was the former director of Project Concern and the Project Choice, Trudy Johnson Merrow, who is a co-founder of Project Concern, they all exemplified in the video heart and passion in helping children and closing that achievement gap. The superintendent of Simsbury, a receiving district, he reflected in a positive tone about the program and also spoke of some of the challenges and support staff that was necessary to be brought in to meet the needs of the students that came from Hartford. The discussion also included how parents were hesitant to send their children because it might be an area that was unknown to them. They talked about that there had been a lot of success for children who had been given a better educational opportunity than they would have received and therefore made an impact on their life moving forward. As a Ridgebury Board of Ed, I know we're speaking about it this evening, I think we need to speak about what we value. I value academic achievement, I value diversity, I value equity like a lot of you. It's also gelled by my own educational experience of having to travel myself as a young child for educational opportunity and safety. I could not go to the school up the block from me where I lived because my parents feared for my safety. So I'm very much for going to school in the district and where you live for various reasons, for community, for culture. But my question is how do we move a needle that for 55 years has said, and Liz, you brought this up, you know, for 55 years, they said that they've helped students be better, become more, but they've only been able to achieve that through selecting students and placing them in a district that's not their own. You know, I do believe that the people of Danbury work hard to provide for their families, and they want a good educational experience for their children. And it's regardless of zip code. And I know we're not speaking on money tonight, but a question that I did ask during a CAPE update on the legislative bills in session was, does the word pilot, quote unquote, mean that this bill may not be funded in the school year 23-24 for Danbury and Norwalk students? And the answer I received was yes, it may not receive funding, or it may go the other way and might be very successful and it might receive more funding. So with that said, and providing you context of where I'm coming from, I think number one, in order to stop putting a Band-Aid on a situation, and even Senator Haskell said that this was a Band-Aid, I think we need to take a step back and reach out to Danbury families and the Danbury Board of Education. You know, what will Ridgefield provide that their current students are not receiving? How can we help them? Is there funding that needs to be redirected to Danbury, to Norwalk, to help the greater student population? Diversity and equity, I think it concerns the community. So we need to involve the community. You know, maybe have participating school districts, have after school programs where children are involved in celebrating culture, celebrating diversity. I heard Tina say, and I agree, we have diversity here in Ridgefield, but we need to celebrate it through food, through art, through music. And number three, if overcrowding is an issue for Danbury, well, we also need to understand what they're doing to help solve that problem. There is a pride in going to school with children from your own neighborhood and community. And, you know, I don't want to rip that away from students if we can provide that for them in their community. What's hard for me about this conversation is we are talking about children. We're talking about families. And of course, we want to help kids, right? And if they're going to get a better education by coming to Ridgefield, well, yeah, they're going to be better off in the end. But what long-term solution are we providing for the greater community? So those are some of my thoughts.
Very well said. Any other thoughts or comments for tonight, or should we table for another meeting?
Understand what the action items are coming out of this. Is there a call to action to bring a community group together? Is there a call to action to try to actually get some data? I mean, like Rachel, I went to a school that was forced, it was called integration back then. And there were plenty of children who were bused and bused back and bused everywhere. And I'd be curious, there's got to be data somewhere that shows how successful or not that those things were for those students. And Connecticut, in the way its program structured, has been unable to provide that. So is there a call to action here? Can we bring the guy that came in and gave his speech about this without data as well back? Or what is the next step here? Because I personally reached out and got nothing. It sounds like Dr. De Silva got the same study I did, and that's the only one. So aside from, and the community involvement, we can take action on, but the data,
I believe that,
I don't know what proponents of this
I believe the
program.
gentleman that came and spoke with us is now in DC, if I'm not mistaken.
Great.
So I don't think we'll see him again. What I'm getting out of this is perhaps we should take a step back and as a board determine whether or not, open choice aside, whether or not diversity in the student body and community would be of benefit. And if so, then we could work on an involving.
What is our jurisdiction for who moves into our neighborhoods? I mean, I value diversity 100%, but I don't manage the real estate in our town.
Right.
So I don't think we own zoning. I don't think we own affordable housing. I'm not sure what we can do other than to celebrate the diversity that's already here. Is that what you mean?
I don't know what I mean. I'm one member of this board. I'm looking for ideas from the other 8. It does not sound like there is support for moving forward in Ridgefield with the open choice program. So as far as as far as an action item, I'm at a loss, Liz, as to what that might be.
Jonathan, if I may, I kind of agree. Rachel brought it up, and I've heard this from our community members who are, who are diverse or who are just moved in. I think celebrating the diversity we have, and I think it's important because there are children who are moving in, and they have. We don't have to change our calendar, any of that. I'm not suggesting anything that drastic, but I'm talking about, religious festivals that different religions have and their food choices, even understanding how certain cultures don't eat certain foods or why not. I think the larger conversation in the community, because it can be very isolating for people who do move, who are in a different, who just don't know this community. Or I talk to them, trust me, I am very involved in some of the people, and I talk to them and they feel really isolated. But understand, the first thing when you move to a new country, a new town, the last thing in your mind is to join the PTA or to talk. You're just trying to navigate school. You're just trying to understand how to get up in the morning, what homework means, what grading happens, and then understanding how food happens. What are the choices? Why do we have this games versus this? So I think a larger group effort to understand the diversity, the needs of the diverse population, how this works, if there are any opportunities for growth, if you will, trying to understand if there is something that the current population feels. I do hear a bunch of stuff, and again, it's all anecdotal, so I'm not going to speak for anyone, but I just want to point out that there's a bunch of data that exists in our community that we should be talking about, because when we talk about it, we can hopefully identify our strengths, some areas of growth, and how we can start these conversations, even for our elementary students. By the time they're in high school, it's a long time away. So starting this, making them feel, and I think I have to say, I'm really happy that our population is changing. Even when I moved here 7 years ago, there were not a lot of ethnically diverse people. I've seen the shift. I talk to them, their the apartment complexes are helping. I'm not getting into the debate of all housing. I'm just saying that this has helped add a different population, which was not there so many years ago. So there is growth in that. We just need to make sure that we are we understand their needs. We are highlighting them. And I loved Rachel's idea, food, programs, whatever it is, arts, I know that we've had, Ridgebury used to have a, Dr. De Silva helped me, I completely forget, a program in which parents come and talk about their country's art.
Yeah, I don't know that, Tina. I did, but the one, if I may just jump in now, because now I feel like this is our conversation's going in a different direction, which was, it's really about what you're talking about is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that work has the ability to unify, or it also has the ability to divide. And what I would ask, if that's the direction, and quite frankly, even if you were saying to me right now, that's not the direction, I would say that that is the direction that this community, like many other communities, needs to take a step back. And when I say that it has the ability to unify or divide, it does, because you really have to take a step back and reflect what are our current practices. You saw that in my memo, when it's not open choices here, right? That's one part of perhaps looking at bringing in more racially, ethnic, economically diverse populations. But there's a whole other level of work, regardless of what your community looks like, that can happen. And that's taking a step back and reflecting on what are our practices. You saw me lump them into categories within my memo, which is curriculum. What does that curriculum look like? What are our teaching tools, right? How do we engage our students with looking at different perspectives and understanding them? What does the culture and climate look like in our schools? How do we make people feel welcome, right? Every person, regardless of who you are, what background you come from, what does that practice look like? It may look great in some schools, and perhaps there's area of growth for others. So there's different elements that certainly, if the board is highlighting that right now as important, I would say that I think most school systems are saying, let's take a look back and look at our hiring practices. Let's look at our curriculum. Let's look at our culture and climate. Look at our social emotional learning. Let's look at our professional learning for faculty. And can we embrace that work of diversity? And I hate to use the terms DEI because that's what everybody's using right now. And it almost feels like it's a stamp, but it doesn't need to happen that way. It doesn't need to be that way. But there's plenty of opportunities to engage in that work with the adults and with our children as we move forward, whether that's a district priority or the work that we're going to do, because that's what we believe as educators is worth having a discussion around.
So this can come back at our retreat this summer as well. potentially as a district priority or not. Any other comments or questions before we move on? This was not an action item tonight. This was a discussion. Okay, moving on. First student.
This agenda is before you tonight for a couple of reasons. First student, our busing company, was notified by their UK-based parent company, First Group PLC, that First Group PLC has entered into an agreement to sell First Student and other North American affiliates, First Transit and First Canada, to EQT Infrastructure. Our current contract with First Student has a consent clause that they are not able to do so without approval from the Board of Education. We took this request from First Student and sent it to the attorneys. The attorneys reviewed it and it came back with the following. As a result of conversations between First Student's attorney and our attorney, that this is a stock purchase. EQT Infrastructure is purchasing the stock of First Student PLC, the parent company of First Student. Another fact that they came back with is the transportation contract will remain with First Student and will be enforced. That there are no known plans to reorganize our current First Student. And that the following is expected to remain in place: the leadership team of First Student, the business operations, district managers, etc. They also indicated that First Student data privacy provisions contained within the contract will continue to be enforced by First Student, and First Student will not share any student data with EQT Infrastructure. It is through these recognized agreements, along with the understanding that First Student provide and continue to provide the same level of service to our board and our students and to the Ridgeville Public Schools that we have agreed to in the contract that we have with them, that our attorneys feels that this consent is something that should this board agree to, can move forward with.
There are questions we can discuss. Otherwise, there is a motion to be read. Let's go ahead and read the motion, then we can entertain questions.
Yeah, I just have one comment. As someone who's familiar with private equity, this is standard practice for any transaction of this nature. So there's nothing in here that's out of what I would normally see in the commercial world.
Thanks, Liz.
I move that the Board of Education authorize the board chair to respond to the letter sent from First Student dated May 13th, 2021 in writing as advised by the board's attorney and as presented to the full board for consideration on May 24th, 2021.
Is there a second? Kathleen, thanks. Any other comments or concerns about this? Otherwise, all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. And moving right up to technology update. I believe there's a motion as well.
I move that the Board of Education approve the purchase of teacher Chromebooks and spend up to $470,000, but not exceed, as the units become available.
Second. Nora. Any discussion? Questions? Ready to
Sean
move
has his
forward?
hand up.
Sean.
How is logistics working out these days? I know it's been a couple weeks since we talked, but it's ugly out there, isn't it?
It is. I'm working with a few vendors right now. Our top vendor, I think, that's in the, how should I say, the best case scenario is Dell Best Buy. So Best Buy has gotten into the educational vendor route, and they partnered with Dell. So we worked through Dell as a vendor, through the education grouping through Best Buy. They have just sourced a bunch of chips from Intel, boards from LG and stuff to make Chromebooks again. So I think that they might be our best bet going forward. And that should be hopefully soonish once I hear their resources able to build the machines. The other longer form one I know you asked about is about the student Chromebooks. That's a little further down. That's also looking good. I might be able to secure those, but like you said, nothing's definite right now.
Thank you.
Thanks. Other questions? Being none, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to policies. We have a motion for the first policy, 0521.
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 0521, equal opportunity plan / non-discrimination.
We saw this last meeting. Any questions or comments? Do I have a second? Ken, thank you. All in favor of approving policy 0521? Unanimous. Thank you. Policy 4118.1, do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 4118.1, sexual discrimination and harassment in the workplace.
Do I have a second? Nora? Comments, questions? There being none, all in favor of approving policy 4118.1? Unanimous, thank you. And moving on to policy 4118.11. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 4118.11, non-discrimination for the personnel series.
Do I have a second? Tina? Questions or comments? Revisions? Being none, all in favor of approving policy 4118.11? Unanimous, thank you. How about policy 5132?
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 5132, student dress code.
Do I have a second? Tina? Comments, revisions, questions? Being none, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. And moving on to policy 5145.4.
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 5145.4, non-discrimination for the student series.
Do I have a second? Nora? Questions, comments, revisions? There being none, all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And policy 5145.5.
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 5145.5, sexual harassment for the student series.
I have a second. Sean? Questions, comments, revisions? Being none, all in favor? Making it easy on me, thank you. That's unanimous. And policy 6141.32.
I move that the Board of Education approve policy 6141.32, instructional technology.
Do I have a second? Ken? Questions, comments, or revisions? There being none, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. And now the COVID-19 policy. First take a motion, maybe a comment.
I move that the Board of Education approve a temporary COVID-19 policy entitled Policy Concerning Health and Safety Protocols Related to the COVID-19 Pandemic.
Before we get a second on that, might I, otherwise we'll have to do it as an amendment. I was just going to suggest that perhaps we put an end date for this to sunset so that we don't have to bring it back before the full board to delete it in a year or whenever. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. We did that with the,
So if we could, I guess, before we second, if we can just add on to Rachel's motion that this policy to be repealed automatically on July 1st, 2022, which would follow the language of how we've done the COVID packet before.
so that would make the motion that the Board of Education approve a temporary COVID-19 policy entitled Policy Concerning Health and Safety Protocols Related to the COVID-19 Pandemic to sunset July 1st, 2022.
Yeah, I think the wording before was to be repealed automatically.
To be repealed automatically. Okay. Do I have a second for that motion as amended? Okay. Any questions or concerns on this one?
I just wanted to give a clarification on it. So this one before in the temporary COVID policy packet, if you look through, it actually wasn't a policy in that packet. It was a regulation. It was something that we discussed and approved, but it was a regulation. But the attorneys, when they just provided us, our normal COVID packet sunsets on the 30th, they said we should allow all of those to sunset if we wanted. But the only one they recommended that we do continue and extend beyond that June 30th was this one in front of us. And they upgraded it from a regulation to a policy. So again, it's been there, it was approved before, but I just wanted to clarify that it's now a policy or regulation.
Thank you. If there are no questions or concerns, all those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. And now we can move on to financials. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education accept the financial report ending April 30th, 2021.
Do I have a second? Jen? Dawn, you want to take us through?
Certainly, happy to. Before you is the financials through April 30th, 2021. Not a lot has changed from last month. With the financials, we continue to monitor our year end. We continue to do the best we can to support the events that the school is going through, such as the bridge program, the needs of technology, special education, facilities. We still plan on spending all of the appropriated funds that we have. And I don't know, we have not yet received the second half of the ECR reimbursement that we are still waiting for. We should have that this month, so I would expect that it would be sometime this week that the state would release it. Any specific questions on any of the financials?
General questions? Now, it doesn't look like much has changed in the last month on these. All in favor? That's non-unanimous. Thank you. And moving on to transfers. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education approve the transfers presented on May 24th, 2021.
Is there a second? All right. Dawn, you want to take us through the transfers a little bit?
Happy to. The first couple on your sheet, Farmingville and East Ridge Middle School, are catch-ups to the transfers that were part of last month's discussion. Other than those, the Ridgeville High School is working to cover their year-end events with some of their transfers. And central office, we started with our year-end transfers to bring before you, cleaning up the salary accounts, and kind of group them all in elementary, between all the individual elementary salary accounts, Ridgeville High School salary accounts, special education, and PPS. And then we also had on the offset side, our budget carries a $450,000 negative balance that needs to be covered for turnover. The middle school teacher salary accounts were on the negative side, which the positive accounts in salary are helping to cover, as well as technology and central office business department.
Any questions on these transfers? If not, all those in favor of approving the transfers? It's unanimous, thank you. And moving on, we have extension of the superintendent's employment contract. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education extend the superintendent's employment contract for 1 year through June 30th, 2024.
Do I have a second for this? Sean? So for everyone's knowledge, the superintendent traditionally has a 3-year contract. At the end of each year, a renewal of 1 year is negotiated and added on. This motion would approve adding on that 1 year to Dr. De Silva's contract. The board has authorized me as chair to negotiate the terms of that extension on the board's behalf. Any questions on the motion? There being none, all in favor of extending the superintendent's contract for 1 year through June 30, 2024. It's unanimous. Thank you. And that was a lot of motions. Moving on now to items of information, starting with the enrollment report.
Karen, is that you?
Yep. Okay, that's me. Good evening, everybody. So every end of the month, you'll see our enrollment report. So you'll see that we have a net increase of 7 students. So just like in normal Board of Ed meetings, you'll see that there's in and outs at all levels, ultimately creating the net increase of 7 at the end of the year. And that each month, pretty much since we started school, there's been an increase in the number of students.
3 students decreased at Barlow Mountain. Those were 3 different families who moved out of town, and 1 student at the high school who had a program change.
Yeah.
And again, the growth is in pre-K.
And that's, as you know, because
that's very typical. Yeah, typical when they turn 3.
Okay, and how about the staffing report?
Okay, so every month you'll see the ins and outs of people who have resigned or retired, or their notice has come to my office in that time, and the notice of who has been hired since the last board meeting. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Okay, and then I can take us to the BOE timeline. We're kind of getting towards the end of our year here. We will add in, as we heard earlier, the pay to participate moved out, was suggested to move out of the strategic planning committee and onto our agenda. So I'll look for time to put that in over the upcoming weeks. Otherwise, this is what we've got coming up until the end of this academic year. As always, if you have items that you would like added to an agenda, please just let me know. And now we can move on to the correspondence to the board, starting with public comment.
So we have no public comment this evening. On the correspondence report, we have received 2 emails since our last regular Board of Education meeting. One email was an invitation to the RHS concerts in Ballard Park. And one email was in regard to our agenda this evening on open choice and the current class sizes in the middle school. That's all.
Well, thank you. We have reached the end of a very long agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Ken moves. Do I have a second? Kathleen. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you all very much. Good, lively discussion. I appreciate that. And Have a great rest of your week.
Yeah, everyone stay safe.